The following program is brought to you by the University of Alabama.
R.P. Finch, after a long career as a mergers and acquisitions attorney in Atlanta, has produced a remarkable debut novel. Skin in the Game is set partly in the offices of a law firm where young associates fret over making partner, but it is also a racy comic romp involving the inventing and licensing of a quantum supercomputer, the CIA, the mafia, and an imaginative thug entrepreneur, Tito Venga, who wants to build a strip mall. That is, a mall comprised entirely of strip clubs. I spoke with R.P. Finch in our studio in Reese Pfeiffer Hall on the campus of the University of Alabama.
Mr. Finch, it's good to see you.
Very nice to be here.
You're Bob Finch.
I am.
But you've published as R.P.
Yes, I am R.P. I thought Bob seemed a bit plain, and so I wanted to maintain a mystique. So I'm R.P. for this purpose.
Well, it's good of you to come all the way over here today. You've driven from Atlanta,
correct,
where you live. But you're not actually a Southerner.
You figured that out.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm from New York, originally Long Island, and I went to undergrad up at Colgate University in upstate New York. And then I got an interest in philosophy at Colgate and decided to go for a PhD. And I wanted to make sure I picked a very good school for that, and Duke was such. And I started my journey south to Duke.
When you finished it, well, never mind before you when you finished, but before you finished, did you have an area in philosophy that has anything to do with probability and Schrodinger's cat and so on? Was that an interest at that time?
Well, not really. I had an interest in philosophy of science, but mostly the philosophy I was doing was ethics and legal philosophy, jurisprudence.
So you got a PhD, and most people in the world would imagine that a person who had actually gone to the trouble to get a PhD in philosophy,
and a lot of trouble it is,
and a heap of trouble, would go be a philosophy professor, but you didn't.
No, I didn't. I taught at Duke while I was getting the degree, but that was the early 70s, and the job market in philosophy disappeared while I was there, literally disappeared. And so having one of our two children by then, I decided it would be a good idea for me to find an occupation where I would actually get paid and where there were jobs. So being at Duke, I went up the road to UNC Chapel Hill for my law degree.
We were talking earlier about how much everyone who's ever been to Chapel Hill just loves it. You were tempted to graduate from law school and stay?
Yes, actually I was. And I clerked at a law firm there, and while Chapel Hill is a unique college town, a beautiful area, and many, many people do stay, the law practice there is pretty much a small town practice. And so I learned from clerking there that I wanted to move to a more of an urban setting. And at that time, it was either Miami or Atlanta, and I ended up in Atlanta.
So you practiced law in Atlanta for 25 years?
Yeah, 30 years, just short of 30.
Well, inside as your practice, you work with a large firm?
Yes.
And
yes.
What was your specialty?
Well, I did mergers and acquisition law, and very, very interesting practice. I did that for 30 years. I started off working in securities and moved toward mergers and acquisitions. And we had some very large clients that were operating all over the country, and so it provided a great opportunity to do a lot of merger and acquisition work.
I have a question about law firms. Why hire one innocent young associate, pay him a lot of money, and work him to death when you could hire two young associates who would each work 40 hours a week at a reasonable salary and go home in the evening and see their families?
I asked that question many times myself.
Yeah.
in the middle of the night sitting at my desk in my office in the law firm. I don't know what, there's an economic basis for that, and there are as many people wanting to come in the door as you can imagine, and so, you know, in any case where it doesn't work out, there's always somebody else to take that person's place.
Right.
So, not that it's completely inhumane, but I mean, that is the model.
It is, and medical interns and residents are starting to get away from that. They're starting to behave, in hospitals, they're starting to behave a little more humanely.
Yes.
Keeping people up for 72 hours cannot be good for medical practice.
Right.
But they murder young lawyers as
They
well.
do, yep. Yeah, and it's really sort of unfortunate because when you are, let's say, at a closing working 2 nights in a row and everybody's really tired, you can make mistakes. And it's not as serious, obviously, as a doctor making a mistake, but there's a lot of money at stake in these deals, and it gets very tense.
Would you call Skin in the Game a satire of a law firm? It's a funny book, and
Well,
it's
yes,
about a law
it's
firm.
meant to be comedic, and it's
Yeah.
about a law firm, and to some extent, yes, I'd say it is. I mean, it's quite an exaggeration in many ways. There's a grain of truth also underneath all of that. So yes, I'd say so.
You have your firm in the novel. I'm not sure that my eyes didn't deceive me, but the firm has, it's Burnham and Wood, by the way. You do mean that to be a Shakespearean spoof on Macbeth,
Well,
right?
I do, yes, I do. And initially, I was thinking about this book. In fact, my wife, who's also a retired English teacher, advanced placement English teacher, thought that I might want to be going down that path and perhaps doing some sort of an update of Macbeth. And I thought that might be a good idea. And I started down that path and quickly decided that was not what I wanted to do, and that was not how this was evolving. But I stuck with the name because I thought it was a good name for a law firm.
Oh, it's fun. I saw it, and I did a kind of double take, almost like a Marx Brothers. That, what's that? And then there wasn't any doubt about it. That firm in your novel, am I right that it has 1,200 lawyers?
Yes.
That startled me. Is that in any way normal?
Yeah, well, there were some national and international firms that do have that many and more.
That's huge.
Yeah, they're not all in one place, of course.
They're not. No.
No.
I mean, I don't know. They would have offices in New York, Boston,
Correct. Yes. all
Karachi.
over.
Who knows, right?
Right.
You have you start your novel off with 3 first-year associates, a girl, and 2 guys, and they're an interesting spectrum of creatures. One of them is a legacy hire, young Ebenezer. Do law firms behave like fraternities? Do they actually hire legacies?
Yeah, some firms do have anti-nepotism policies, but a lot of these firms do. And in this case, Eben is the 4th generation of a founding partner in this long-standing, stodgy Wall Street law firm.
Yeah. Do people wear white shoes anymore?
It's a white shoe firm, but no, I don't think they do.
I wonder if they do anywhere. They
I
do in
don't think so.
Miami? I don't know.
I don't know. My
Anyway,
characters don't.
But he doesn't have any money of his own, really.
Right.
Eben is just a guy.
This is true.
Right.
This is true, and he's really functioning somewhat under a cloud because although he's the scion of a founding partner of this firm, his father, in my story, was asked to leave the firm, and there's a sort of a cloud hanging over him that is something of a motivation for him to really get his act together and get his law practice off the ground quickly.
Yeah. And he has he's such a dunce, but he has this faltering relationship with another first-year associate, Ellie. And since I am from the Hudson Valley, I looked at that and I said, are these Rockefellers? What estate? What'd you have in mind there?
I had that in mind, although just tangentially. I mean, that was the model in my head of a family that was a dynasty in the Hudson Valley.
And an old Dutch
Van
Dutch
Rensselaer.
community up Terrytown, Croton,
Right.
up along
Exactly. That's true.
up along towards Meeksville. Yeah, she's fun. and I like her. She seems much more sophisticated than Eben. What when you think about Ellie as a let's think of her as a real person, a real 25-year-old girl.
Right.
Is she an experienced person? Is she a sophisticated person?
She's not sophisticated in the world that she finds herself in. In fact, she's sort of been pushed into it. She's very sophisticated psychologically in other ways, and she's been advised, for example, by a family member to hitch her wagon to Eben Starr, since he's viewed as a legacy, as you say. And of course that doesn't really pan out. But so she sort of has her sights set on him, but there's also a lot more to her than that.
I like her.
She's very smart.
Yeah.
And she's one of the more, I guess you could say, normal people that inhabit my book.
She's smart, she's pretty, and she doesn't seem spoiled, even though she clearly comes from a very distinguished family. Your other first-year associate is Wolf, who is a minority hire. It's supposed to have been in teen gangs when he was a
Yes, this law firm has an outreach program that's called Ex Machina, and I guess the law firm is the Deus that comes into these communities, finds people that they think have some potential, and supports them through college, through law school, and finds a place for them in the law firm.
You mean he's been, in a sense, under their care from the time he was a college freshman? That kind of
Right. It's
it's cool.
sort of a joint program, and firms do this. And it's quite controversial because some people on the more progressive side of the spectrum, you might say, think that it's exploitative of people that probably won't last in these environments. So it's a way of intaking people, getting a lot of work out of them, and then showing them the door.
What are the percentages on associates anyway? Who gets partner? Half? 25%?
It
What?
really depends on the firm, but in most cases, on these large firms, almost nobody. I mean, they'll take in groups of 50 people, and ultimately, it's very hard to say, but maybe 5 end up making partner.
Well, that's terrible.
It is.
That's
Yes,
just
isn't
awful.
that terrible? It is terrible.
You should make fun of. You should write a comic novel making fun of people who behave like that. They need. I've forgotten the term, but they need an area of law that they can develop so that they might possibly make partner one day. What is the term for that?
This is true. Well, they're generating a practice group, a practice area.
Yeah.
And this, in a way, harkens back to Eben's father, who was asked to leave over firm politics. And there were always politics, there were always turf wars. And Eben's idea, which is a good one, is that he needs to carve out an area that is not already a practice area for that firm. So he's not going to be stepping into somebody else's territory.
Right. And he's going to make it nanotechnology,
Right.
and more specifically, the quantum computer.
Correct.
All right. Everything I know about the quantum computer I learned from your book, if I learned it. It is a computer in which instead of being bipolar,
Binary.
well, a 1 or a
Maybe
0,
bipolar.
somehow or other the process remains flexible.
Yes, it's not easy to explain, but one way to put it is that on the quantum level, when you're dealing with particles the size of atoms, let's say, and even smaller parts of atoms, a particle can have more than one, what is normally viewed as an inconsistent state at one time. It can have many, many different states at one time in suspension.
Okay.
And so what the quantum computer does, it takes advantage of that fact. And so it can do all of its calculations at once instead of seriatim, and therein lies the power. So, for example, a quantum computer could resolve a mathematical question in 2 seconds that the most powerful classical computers could never get to. There isn't enough time to crunch the numbers.
And is this science fiction, or
No,
is this actually going to happen?
This is coming down the pike. Many universities and think tanks are working on quantum computers. It's much less far down the road than I make it appear in the book. But And one of the big problems is the problem that I discuss in the book, where all of these states held in suspension, if something goes wrong, like somebody slams a door, the whole thing collapses, and it never gets to end of the calculation. And so that's what Julian Attaboy, who is the
boy
physicist
genius,
in my book, solves that problem.
The metaphor that the characters in the book use sometimes to talk about the actions of the quantum computer is the box in which Schrodinger's cat does or does not live.
Right.
How do you, this is not even make-believe, just this is not even hypothetical. Explain to me, as if I didn't understand, because I don't,
well, that's
about
good.
Schrodinger's cat.
It's good that you don't, because Schrodinger himself said at one point in the 1920s, I guess, that if anybody thinks they understand quantum physics, they're wrong.
Good.
Nobody understands quantum physics, although people apply quantum physics all the time in doing calculations, but really understanding what's, and you might say, is the philosophy underneath the quantum mechanics, nobody really understands. Schrodinger's cat is a thought experiment where a cat is put in a box, and there's a poison pellet put in the box,
Yes.
and a little bit of something that is radioactive, let's say uranium, and you never know when the first atom of uranium will change in this radioactive sense. And so it's a random event, and you close the box, and so the theory of Schrodinger's cat is until you open the box to take a look, it's neither dead nor alive, or it's both dead and alive.
All right, I get it that you can't know if the cat is dead or alive. I don't get it that the cat is both dead and alive.
Well, that's a controversy actually within quantum physics as to how to interpret this. And some people think that Schrodinger made this up to show how absurd quantum physics appears to be when you think about it in the normal terms that you use in everyday life.
Because in my head, that cat is either alive or that cat has died.
Right, and see, that's exactly the difference we were talking about before. These particles, they're not only in one state or another state, they're in multiple states. And until you look, or until there's an observer and a consciousness that looks and collapses that system into one state, it's actually in all of those states. Or so they say.
I will take your and Schrodinger's word for this. Our discussion so far makes it seem as if your novel is serious business, and it's not. It is a comic novel, and the place where, I mean, there's a lot of law firm politics. The idiot Huntington Harrow is a riot. A senior partner who's a complete dunce. Obviously a living dope and a wonderful creation. I'd love to know on whom he is based, and not that we would know him. But
well, if he were based on a particular person, I wouldn't tell you. But,
no,
but
of course not.
But he wasn't.
Right. But the place where the novel gets a lot of its comedy is when these associates and Julian Attaboy figure out that they have something here that could be commercialized, and everybody could make a lot of money, and they could write the rules, they could write the contracts, they could write the licenses, and so on. They need people who will put skin in the game and help them get across Death Valley.
Correct. That's exactly what they need, and it turns out to be much more difficult than they expected it to be.
Death Valley is the gap between the idea and the funding.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes, you have people working in universities, working on these sort of crazy ideas that may or may not have application, and one seems to have great application, but they need some business types to get in there with the dollars so that they can actually get across that gap, that valley of death.
So that's where it becomes, where it's a load of fun. They end up dealing with the mafia to raise money.
Yes, that's true.
Now, I know the answer to this, but I want to hear it. Why does the mafia want to invest, possibly, in a quantum computer?
Okay. Well, the answer is that the quantum computer, as I mentioned before, can crunch numbers so quickly that various systems that we rely upon, for example, the system that keeps your personal information private on the internet relies on the fact that there are no computers powerful enough to what they call factor the numbers and break through that. And it is true that there are no computers that can do that now, but a quantum computer would be able to do that just like that.
So what the mafia wants to do is
They want to hack the net.
they want to own a computer that can hack anything.
Correct.
Their rivals in this matter is the CIA. Anyway, the CIA is a rival here.
It is.
They don't want to use the computer to hack things. They want to prevent people from using it at all.
Yes.
Is that, I mean, as I understood the plot, what the CIA and FBI are involved in is not promoting the quantum computer, but stalling
Quite
it
the
dead in its
opposite.
tracks.
Yes, they want to shelve that technology. They want to be able to use it themselves, of course,
Yeah.
but they don't want anybody else to have access to that for this very reason, that it's so powerful, a code breaker, that all sorts of security measures we were just saying on the internet and in terms of personal individuals or national security codes would be
your mafia
vulnerable.
and your CIA people, but especially the mafia, Tito and the Stump and Canelli, is that? No,
Capelli.
Capelli. They're wonderful mobsters. They're vulgar. They're horrible.
They are vulgar.
They're funny. Tito gave me a lot of laughs. He's a stripper, pole dancer, entrepreneur.
Yes.
He wants to start a strip mall.
Well, what he wants to do, he has a strip club in Brooklyn called Toyland. And his dream, everybody has a dream in this book, and his dream is to expand that into what he calls a multiplex, sort of like a movie theater with multiple screens, and there would be multiple showrooms, Toyland being only one, and each would have its own theme. So he has big plans, and he needs a lot of money to do that.
And some of his themes are?
Well, he has a variety of themes. They're all quite vulgar. You wouldn't be surprised to hear variations, adult-themed fairy tales.
Right, there's a fairy tale. There would be in this multiplex. There'd be a place where people reenacted obscene fairy tales.
Yes, obscene fairy tales.
And classics like The French Maid.
Yes, the classics.
And biblical stories.
And even Bible stories. Yes, I wasn't sure you wanted to go there, but
Oh,
yes,
sure,
even
sure.
Bible stories.
It's a riot. And the strange thing is, I was reading along and I thought, this is wonderful. Is it? I have no idea. Apparently, the adultainment.
Adultainment is the
Adultainment.
term I've coined in there.
I
yes.
like it. Yeah. Apparently, this is $1 billion business. Would there be customers for this kind of thing? I mean, not that
Well,
you're supposed to have done research, but what do you think?
My only research was quantum physics in this case. I'm sure there would be, because however many people would be interested in going to Toyland, that many people would also be interested, you would presume, in going to these other showrooms.
Well, I love the theme park notion that you would go, I guess, depending on how you were feeling that day, you would go and watch strippers do Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, and then in the other room they would be doing Cinderella.
Yes, or Little Bo Peep, perhaps.
Of
I don't know.
course, why not? You'd have an animal act as well. It's good. It's a good thing. No, it's perfectly. The novel is very clever and funny and witty.
Thank you.
I hope you get an audience that appreciates just how much pain you've taken here. You've been working on this for a while.
Yes, it took 5 years to write it. It took me 3 years, because of the way I write, it took about 3 years to write it. And after the 3 years, and only then did I realize I actually had a 900-page manuscript. And so I took 2 more years to cut it down, the process called Killing Your Darlings, to 300 pages.
How?
It was difficult.
What'd you lose?
About 600 pages.
Well, what did you? Well, I mean, did you lose scenes, characters,
Yes.
a subplot?
Yes.
What did you? What did
No.
you, what did
yes.
You
Well, I write without an outline, and so although at the end of the 900 pages everything sort of fit together, it was really bloated, And there were many roads I had gone down and enjoyed doing so, and I had a lot of great scenes, I thought, but they turned out not to be necessary, let's say. And so I knew I wasn't going to end up with a 900-page book, and so I just took them out.
I'm hoping you did the right thing. I
I
haven't seen
too.
the stuff you took out, but I have seen the stuff you left in. Will you make use of this? I mean, is there? You've got this big chunk of material. What are you working on now? And will what you're doing now make use of what you had to get rid of in Skin in the Game?
No, I think that is gone. I'm thinking now of working on something that, while Skin in the Game is multi-genre and really sort of complex with a lot of competing groups of people with different agendas, I'm thinking next of doing something a little simpler, although still within the legal realm. And I have an idea. It's not gelled enough yet to really discuss it, but I think more of what you might call a legal thriller, also hopefully in a literary mode.
Well, there's a precedent for this, for lawyers writing legal thrillers.
Yes, this is true.
In fact, I'm wandering the earth trying to find a lawyer who is not writing a legal thriller.
Yes, this is true.
In the
It
hope,
seems to be
in the hopes that the
epidemic.
firm will be the result. Well, as a debut, this is very forceful and a lot of fun. And
Thank you so much.
I hope your adult readers really enjoy it, and your physicist readers and your and your lawyer readers. Any repercussions of any kind? Has anybody at your you've been retired a few years.
Yes, I've been retired about 7
But
years.
your colleagues, anybody read it?
Yes, I think a lot of people at my firm have read it.
What'd they say?
I think a lot of people at my firm were a little bit nervous in the run-up to it, wondering, is this an expose of our firm, which of course it isn't.
No,
And
it's not.
I've gotten a lot of very good feedback, and many of them are people I believe, at least they say so, who have written some very good reader reviews on Amazon, for example.
Good.
And so, yes, I've gotten a very positive response.
All right. Well, I know that your next novel won't be 900 pages, and I know it won't take you 6 years.
It will not.
But I'll be looking for it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This
I
has been a
appreciate
pleasure.
it. It's for me as well. Thank you.
To order this season of Bookmark on DVD, call 1-800-463-8825. Additional information can be found on our website at www.alabamatv.org.